How you entrepreneurs? Today we have Jeff Krahl. He is a international business coach and a best-selling author for a book called Fifth Power for Relationships. It's fairly easy to find out. Google it, Fifth Power for Relationships. It's kind of an interesting story. He basically had a lot of different relationships before he found his soulmate. He was on a path to, knew he wanted something more. He wanted that family, right? And so he put together all he learned in his own coaching program and found his soulmate. From there, everyone heard a story, and when they heard a story, they go, I want that same kind of success. And so what do when you're a coach and you have this path towards love? You teach it. So listen, subscribe, tell your friends. Hopefully you like it.
Welcome to the road to growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with real estate agent Vinny SD.
All right, so we are here with Jeff Krahl. So you are a international business coach, but I think another really big thing about you is a best-selling author with your Fifth Power for Relationships. I think this is, I've had a lot of different business coaches, international coaches, global, all the different classifications, but I think the one thing that really differentiates you from the other people that I've had is this focus that you have on helping people find that soulmate you have. So tell me a little about, where did that come from? Where did that passion? What for listener here?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is an interesting story because the way that all came about was, one day I was working with one of my clients in Australia over the phone, and he was really stuck. He felt hopeless. He felt like frustrated that he couldn't find like his best ideal client for his business. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. So, I told him, well, if you drop ship me, there in Australia, I could find your ideal client. And I went through what I call the 5 different key powers in helping him find his ideal client. And as soon as I hung up the phone, it was one of those moments. We've all probably had those before where you ask yourself, like, man, that was some really good advice. I probably should take that on advice for myself. And as a business coach, you really have to, you've got to lead with, if you're telling someone to do, you've got to be doing that yourself, or you have no integrity with that. So for me, I ran into that wall, and I was like, well, I've always wanted to find my soulmate. I want kids. I want family. And if I was truthful with myself at the time, it was crystal clear I was not doing the actions like I shared with my client to find his ideal client. I wasn't doing those actions to find my soulmate, my one and only. So at the end of that, it just shifted everything. And so that day I got into action, and I literally followed the same steps I told him on how to find a client to find my soulmate. And a short story about it would be I went on 43 dates, all by introductions from people in my community to find my soulmate. We've been married for 12 years now. We have 4 kids, live here in beautiful La Jolla or in California.
Perfect. So now let's walk before this. So
okay.
I know we're at this snippet right here, and I've heard that story, and I think it's so powerful right there. The idea that you bought a cruise, 2 tickets to the cruise.
That's correct. Yeah, before even knowing who she was.
And then
I bought 2 fully paid cruise tickets that basically I couldn't afford at the time to push myself to really implement every step of the process of finding my soulmate. And it's one of those things where if you put it out there and you start, not letting all those fears and internal conversations stop you in life, you can have anything that you want.
So what happened before this? Because there's usually, at what age actually was this where you bought the tickets and went on this, was it 42 dates?
Yeah, it would have been 12 years ago. So I was, make me do math. So 35 at the time.
Okay. So was there something that happened before this where you had maybe a past relationship that pushed you on this path to go, I want to find my soulmate?
Yeah, so I've had, plenty of relationships that have gone, a week or two or 3 months or a year. I was even married at one time for a year, and it went, that went down a divorce. And I learned so much from all of those, but I could see a repetitive pattern that was there. And I could see that if I kept following that, then I would never find my soulmate. And that's when I had that epiphany when I was working with that client. I was just like, I'm really not doing that for myself. And I was letting that.
What was that pattern?
The pattern?
Yeah.
Well, the pattern is I'd get in a relationship, and then after, the relationship was not about like long term. It was all about short term pleasures or short term, fun type activities. It had nothing to do with, having kids or wanting that long time relationship that was there. And then I found myself, getting distracted in relationships where I would do other things that would take my time. I'd spend too much time in my businesses at the time, and I thought I was doing the right thing to build the security for my family, but really what I was separating myself from, really being with that special person, listening to them, understanding them, and being on the same page with each other. So it was a lot of communication issues is what I noticed that was there.
Well, and I've heard your story, again, I know a lot of listeners haven't, but you basically found a lot of your dates based off of the people you knew. Right, you asked them, "Hey, I'm looking for so and so. I'm looking for so and so," and they set you up. Now, when you previously were in your previous relationships and your previous wife, were you doing the same kind of activities, or
no,
you?
I wasn't doing any of that. There was no qualification. It was just if I ever bumped into someone and we just had a good conversation, it turned into some sort of relationship. I mean, I could tell that most people I was around, I could relate to and build some sort of relationship. And what I found is that I was trying too hard rather to be in a relationship versus just being my natural self in a relationship. So when I started in my book, there's a chapter called The Power of Clarity and Focus. And inside there, you really discover like what are those things that matter most to you. And I had 5 top qualities that I was looking for in a woman. And if she didn't meet any one of those, like if there's only 4 out of the 5 or 3 out of the 5, I just wouldn't even go on a date. Like I just automatically said, nope, not gonna do that, because I'd find myself justifying that it's okay that they only have 3 of the 5, or that's okay that maybe they can grow into the other ones. And what I found over the years, if I look back in my past relationships, that never happened. It may have lasted for a month or 3 months or a year or 3 years, but eventually it ended up with the same outcome, which is a broken relationship.
Yeah, no. So this all stemmed from that original client that you had, right? From the coaching avenue. So
Correct.
Did you always know you wanted to help people in the coaching and also help people in the relationships?
Well, it's interesting how I got into coaching. So at the time, I used to run a corporate housing company, and I was a regional VP, and I had multiple places that I was managing. And then the 9/11 hit and completely destroyed the industry for business travel. And so all that corporate traveling slowed down, and I found myself like in the wrong industry. And so I decided, to move to San Diego.
Where'd you come from?
Originally from Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
So when I went to San Diego, I figured, well, what do I want to do? And for me, it was always about, I always loved helping people. Like that was the thing I loved about no matter what I did was, how can I help that person? How can I help that person? And I didn't realize it until I had to pick another industry. And so I thought, well, I'd become a financial advisor. And I started interviewing with all the different, major firms, and almost all of them wanted to hire me. And I find that kind of unusual, right? You'd think somebody would say, oh, you're not qualified, let's move on. And I had no experience in the financial industry, so it wasn't like I was overqualified or anything. So what I found was the industry wasn't actually either, I discovered that they're either not hiring properly or they're just really bad at training, because they'll take anyone. And so what I determined after that is I probably need to find one of the best trainers. And at the time, I looked up who were the top influential people in the financial industry for training, and one of them lived right here in town in La Jolla. So I met up with him, and he was actually hiring people to be a consultant to financial advisors, and he was teaching that person how to be a consultant and how to coach and train financial advisors in their business. And so I did that for 12 years with that gentleman, and and so that's where I kind of fell in love with coaching from that point.
How did you know it was the right time to leave after 12 years?
After 12 years, I realized that if I wanted to hit my goals faster, that it was more importantly for me to be independent than to share the results and the income of what I was doing.
So do you feel that he was holding you back, or just he wasn't able to teach you more?
It just wasn't able. Well, no, I think there's always plenty to learn. So yeah. I'm one that's open-minded and into growth all the time. I'm always taking courses and learning. I don't think it was the learning aspect. It was the growth aspect of making enough money in that business to support my family the way I wanted to. So there was a cap on that, and that cap wasn't going to work. So if I would have gone another 5 years or so on, it might have got, I may have gotten a little bit more, but it still wasn't going to hit me to my goal.
Oh, so he capped you out, allowing you what you could actually earn?
Yeah, well, it seemed that way. It seemed like every time I'd get to a certain point, the rules of the game would change, and then I would increase my revenue again and still come out with the same income. And that repeatedly happened for multiple years, and then I just decided it's probably best for me to do something that's more powerful and could get me to where I want to go. And
so if say someone's listening right now, they're an employee of a company, right? Mm-hmm. And they kind of feel this similar kind of struggle.
Yeah.
What was something that back then you had a conversation with your boss with that maybe now with all the knowledge you've gained, you would have maybe changed the conversation or put other marks in place? Or
I was pretty straightforward with him that this is what I wanted, and is it possible, or why these things were happening. I think if I was an employer, I would really find out, like, what are the goals of your clients or your employees, and really let them know, hey, you can do that, and show them the path and give them that path of how that's possible, versus changing the rules all the time where that may eventually cap out where you can't go any further. So that was one thing. On the employee side, if I'm on the employee side, what I discovered for myself, it was just like, after a couple years of just saying I probably should do something or I shouldn't do something, and hadn't seen anything drastic in the business happen for me, that it's better to move on and really take that chance.
So what happened next? So how do you transition from being someone's employee to being your own boss?
Yeah. For me, it was just really there's two things about it. So one, a friend of mine, at the time I was fixing and flipping homes as well on the side. So I had a side business, and I knew a lot in the real estate aspect. So a friend of mine said, we need a CEO for our real estate company in La Jolla. And so I went and interviewed with them, and I could see the potential of what was possible and how I could actually reach my goals. And at the same time, I would still be doing coaching because I had 253 agents that I would be able to coach. So it it was a drastic change. It was a scary thing because I was going from something, steady and consistent and reliable to something that was now like questionable, in a whole different industry.
Were you in a relationship at the time, or were you?
I was, yeah. At that time I was with my wife, and I had 4 kids, so it was a big step. It was like, do we cut the line, even know that we don't have the security to make that work 100% unless I hit certain targets.
Wait, when did this happen?
That was in 2015, I think.
Okay,
yeah.
So that was after basically your coaching, where you actually to find your wife. So at that time, the transition to this new platform is that when you went kind of full force into your own coaching?
Yeah. No, I went part-time.
Part-time. Okay.
Yeah. So at the time, I still had coaching clients as well as, running my real estate business as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so for the coaching, and to kind of jump back, you said you were under someone else when you were doing coaching with someone else?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was an employee type position.
Okay. So when did that happen? When did the transition from being an employee to being your own,
In 2015.
Okay. And so your old boss was allowing you to take all your clients with you?
No, I didn't take any of my clients.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No, I completely just moved on to a whole different thing and focus.
Yeah.
So
how does that, and sorry for kind of mixing the timelines for
that's
listeners.
okay.
So when did you put your book together?
So my book was put together a while back because people kept saying, every time they heard my story, they're like, you got to write a book about that.
Yeah.
You got to write a book about that. And I always fought it. Like, I didn't really want to write a book. I don't like to read. I like to listen to audiobooks, but don't like to read, let alone be an author. And so at the time, I decided in 2009, I decided I'd just write the book. So I wrote it, and it just sat there. Didn't even publish it, didn't do anything. It's just that next time someone said, you should write a book about that, that would really help me. I said, great, I'll send you the book. I wrote it.
So you wrote the book while you're still almost an employee of the coaching platform.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And so then you kind of took all the stuff you've kind of accumulated during that coaching platform and kind of built your own structure, in essence.
In essence, yeah. I mean, there were they're all success principles.
Yeah.
But there were definitely some parts that were very similar. But most of it was just my own perspective of what needed to happen through the phases of finding your soulmate.
So now, as it fluctuates, you're not an employee anymore, right? Over the last couple of years, how has that been, trying to find new business? Was it still finding new business when you were the employee still, or was it?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, so it's still a separate platform.
Either way, I had to go out. Yeah.
That base, in essence.
Exactly.
Okay, that's fair enough.
And it gave me a lot more freedom to do what I thought was the best choice for the client versus just going down the same path that was required.
So how much of your coaching program has changed now that you're kind of the final say in the coaching platform?
My coaching has changed a lot. So I have 2 different platforms on the coaching. So one, I'm a certified high performance coach. So that's under the High Performance Institute that did a major study primarily on the habits that high performers all have in common. So basically they reviewed over 300 indicators of what makes a high performer. And these were people that were consistently at the top of their game, whether they're CEOs, Olympic athletes, managers, wherever they were at in their position, they were at the top of their game, and they found all the similar habits that each of them have in this study, and it's one of the largest studies that was ever done. And so I got certified to use their curriculum to be able to provide, a proven platform that would work for any client in any industry.
And then, for your dating platform, was that something that you built from scratch, pretty much?
That was just built directly from scratch. So the dating platform was something I did where my first program I called it the 120-day love challenge. And basically I had a group of people, there's about 13, and out of those 13, 3 people consistently showed up on a regular basis. So, think about the 80-20 rule. It's pretty close to that. They showed up, they did the work, and out of those 3, 2 of them found their soulmate.
So how does your classes vary from the content that you coach that was almost not built, but basically put together by someone?
It's all in the language. So
Yeah.
the process is the same.
Yeah.
It's the language of what's being said that alters.
And with one, the process is the same for here, but the dating program on the other side is something you built from the ground up. So when you teach a class, do you feel a difference in how you teach that class? Because one is from the ground up, and the other one, you're using their structure, but you're doing it in no way. Does that make kind of sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the good part about owning your own business is
Yeah.
you can merge whatever is needed at the moment.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a doctor's prescription. It's kind of like if you come to me with a barrier, like I can't get through this, then I just kind of look at my tool chest and say, okay, well, there's this tool and this tool and this tool. These things is what we want to focus on now to help you break through that barrier that's stopping.
So you really don't feel a difference in teaching the one program for the business owners compared to the one program for the romance?
No.
It's content's content.
It's almost the same. It's
Okay.
funny because the barrier is like for a business owner, it might be, well, I'm not comfortable with talking with people.
Yeah.
Okay, well, for someone looking for their soulmate, it's
Same
pretty
way.
similar. I'm not comfortable talking to a woman. I'm not comfortable talking to a man. And then it's like, well, I have this fear that they're going to leave me. Well, I have this fear that my client is going to leave my business and go somewhere else, and then I have to find new clients. I have this, I'm really frustrated because people don't actually do what they say they're going to do in my business. I'm really frustrated because when I go out on dates, they're not really the same person. They say they are, and they don't do what they're talking about. It was such a match. The barriers are almost identical. It's human fears.
The only difference, I guess, is the saying in business, always be closing. I guess in the relationship.
Yeah, you're only going to close once.
So tell
That's the good part about it, right? You're gonna build all this skill to find one person. You don't have to build a skill to build a whole empire.
No, it's funny how you bring that up. How there's a lot of similarities between business and relationships. Like I saw that firsthand. I was single for a short little while, and it's just funny because it's communication. It's
totally
diving
is.
deeper.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. But I do recognize how people behave. And so I think that's the unique thing about me is that people talk a lot about is I hear not what you're saying, but what's behind what you're saying. Like what's the thing that's really holding you tight that causes you to say what you're saying verbally. And so it's that behavior to discover that, and then more importantly, help you figure out a way to get through it, not by giving you the answer, but by asking you questions to discover it. Because if I give you the answer, you may just fight that answer.
Yeah.
If I ask you questions and you discover it, you're more likely to say, I want to go do that, which then gets you the result that you want. So, is
there any sort of generalities on how many dates or how many conversations it's okay to? Is it okay for the first date to have a kiss? Is it the first date to go home with them? I mean, is it second date, third date?
Yeah,
I mean, is there generalities to that?
There's so many things to that. I don't believe in any of that.
Okay.
I mean, I truly believe, like I said, it's a prescription.
Yeah.
And if that's what's right at the time, then that's what's right at the time.
So you were kind of working more on the mindset of the dating, right? And not really kind of putting them into some kind of box.
Exactly. Because it wasn't like, I didn't want it to be an interview process.
Yeah.
Right? Like you do this and then this and then this and this. It's kind of like, here's all the things you could do. And based on your scenario, which which ones do you want to push forward on? Yeah.
How many, and you don't have to answer if you don't have to
That's okay.
With the knowledge that you know now, right, of dating, okay?
Right.
Finding that soulmate. Mm-hmm. And factoring in the idea that your hurdles and tribulations bring you to the person that you are today. How many of those past relationships would you still have started in your past before you met your current wife, your soulmate?
It's interesting because I think I was in different places at the time. If I was truly just looking for my soulmate at that time, and I really had like my clarity that I had when I found my wife, I don't think a lot of them I might not have dated. You know, there was pieces in there that I just didn't know at the time, but at that time I didn't really care.
Yeah.
You know, so it was like I had a different focus, I guess, at that time. And although I've always known as a child I wanted to have a family and kids and this, it was never like that's the goal in my mind. It was just whatever happens, happens, so to speak.
So what has been maybe one or two hurdles you kind of had to overcome to who you were? I mean, as younger kid to who you are now. What are kind of the hurdles? It could be finding a business, understanding the woman, because they can be very complicated women, people out there. So
there's a lot of that, right? So I think one of the things that I had to overcome was who I was being in the moment. And so one of the things in my book, my book's called The Fifth Power for Relationships, the 5 key secret powers to finding your soulmate. And so out of those 5 key secret powers, I actually started my book with the 5th power, which I think is the most important power, and that's how you show up in the moment. Most of the time, we're just unconscious. We just walk in, we do whatever we do, and our brain is just operating on automatic pilot versus in some sort of intention. And so one of the things that I think that altered for me was that I could come into a room and be a certain way that I wanted to show up. Like if you just said, hey, Jeff, would you like to be a happy person in life, or do you want to just be, an angry, frustrated person in life? I mean, it's pretty simple. You'd be like, yeah, I want to be happy, of course. But on most part, some days you just walk in angry and frustrated, and you're just unconscious of that's how you're being. And that was a huge thing for me to recognize that I did that in certain relationships. And some of those relationships I had in the past could have been better if I was actually conscious aware of how I was being in those relationships.
Well, it's interesting because we put ourselves in these kind of so-called ruts, quote unquote, right? And then Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks about the idea that we're kind of a system by the age of 35, right? And so I was talking to other people about this, and it's when you get into those kind of ruts, you have to change up your actions. So if you basically comb your hair with your right hand, start combing your hair with the left hand every couple of days, just so you kind of push your programming a little bit differently.
That's right. You start to be more conscious of combing your hair. I mean, we've all had the times where we're driving on automatic pilot, right? Oh
gosh, those are dangerous.
Right?
30 minutes driving.
You don't really know it. Your brain's like moving along. You may even miss an exit sometimes, and you're just on automatic pilot.
Oh yeah.
And so those are the kind of things. That's what I'm talking about. Is if you set an intention for the moment, this time, this moment that you're with that person or whatever environment that you're in, you're more likely to show up that way and be that way if that's how you want to be. You always have a choice to do that. Most of the time, if you're running on automatic pilot, it's not a choice for you. So my advice is always, choose that intention of how you want to show up and really like play the game of showing up that way, no matter what is said. They call you a jerk, and if your goal was to be happy, it might be, wow, so Vinny, why are you calling me a jerk? It's just like, it might just be to put that aside and just say, wow, he must be having a bad day. rather than try to argue about it. No, I'm not a jerk. No, I'm happy. No, you're not. I'm happy. And next thing you know, you're now nowhere close to your intention of being happy. So a lot of times it just comes down to you setting the intention and then constantly playing the game to be that way in the moment. So, and I think most people go on dates and they don't do that. You know, they may set the intention of like, man, I'm scared, right? Or
with these,
or I hope this thing, and then the social thing, right? Swipe left, swipe right. You can do this. You can do. I think all of that takes away from the human interaction of really being in front of the right person.
Well, you also have to figure out too what their end goal is. I mean, I know when I got out of my last relationship, and I'm in a new one now and I know in that process, that window where I was talking to people, right? Because I'm always curious about people's advice about stuff, right? And it was so surprising how many people were talking about the social media platforms, how you go on this platform, swipe here, do this. And if someone's so focused on their end goal, right, of maybe having kids or having a family or having a relationship, whatever it is,
right,
sometimes they'll look past someone that's looking to manipulate them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the thing that's very tough. It's the same thing when you're talking about with like real estate, right? When someone's looking at the end goal of making money off it, they'll look past sometimes with someone looking to manipulate them because they see the idea of money there. It's kind of scary in a lot of that stuff. So I think you just got to be very aware and be very cautious.
Yeah, and that's the trust factor. See, so that's what you say, that's what we hear, and so on. But what's really behind in the root of all of that is trust.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm talking. You would work on how do you need to be in the moment where that trust is just automatically there. They don't ask you for it. They see you in your demonstration of that.
Well, I would almost think too, I mean, because now I've seen people that are very aware of how they can manipulate situations, right?
Yeah.
So for women out there, right, because I have sisters and I always tell them all the time.
I have daughters.
So it's like one of the things, like dive deeper, know their true intentions.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I actually did some catechism when I was younger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coach that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was telling the kids there at that time, I go, the worst first date you can ever have is going to the movies.
Yeah, because you don't talk.
You don't talk.
You don't talk.
And then you
it's
get
like
the first
such a great date. It's such a great date, you know? Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? Fantastic. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
There's a dating podcast too. It's actually interesting. They were talking about one of your best dates you can do if you're a guy and you're trying for a second date is go to like Chunky Cheese or one of those arcade games because it starts getting the person to remember a memory that they had when they were younger and they start correlating that memory with you.
Yeah. See, I think the whole manipulation thing. I also think a lot of that manipulation stuff is very crystal clear. Like I sense it when there's something. It's that you got to listen to your intuition, and if you feel like there's something like that,
but how many?
I just feel like that's a sign right there.
I came across women, and I would talk to women, right? That you could tell they just wanted a relationship. They didn't care who was with. They just want a relationship. So they're not looking past. They're basically giving the person the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And you feel so bad. You're like, oh my God, I feel so far.
But it's so true. I mean, there was times, and that's good because there was times like when when someone would say, "Hey Jeff, you should go out with Susie," you know, and then I would ask them, "Well, tell me about Susie," and they would tell me everything, and I would try to find out, do they meet my 5 qualities that I was really looking for? And if the answer was yes, I'd go, yeah. Sounds like Susie meets those. I really want to go. I'd love to talk to her. So can I call her or do you want her to call me? And they would do that. And then I would call. And sure enough, as soon as I talked with Susie, sometimes it was like, man, I don't want a relationship. I just want to have fun. I want to party. I want to do this. I want to do that. And those were the hard times because it's kind of like, you know, the man in me would just be like, yeah, let's just do that. You know, it's like, no, but the goal was to actually find my soulmate. Yeah. It wasn't to just have fun. And so those are people like I just literally just did not go out on a date with. And I would tell them straightforward, well, I'm looking for the woman of my dreams. I want to get married in the next couple years, have kids. It doesn't sound like that's something you're up to. And they'd go, no. I'd go, well, I just don't want to waste your time. you know, and that was tough. And women can do the same thing on the other side. And again, that's, like you said, going deep, asking those questions to find out, are they up for that?
Well, what's next? What's next for Jeff, for your coaching? What's next?
Couple things. So one, right now, I am at the end of this month, I'm going to do my 120-day love challenge again. So
this might not be going out by the time this is going out. So
yeah,
it might be the next one. So don't get too sad about that.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm going to do an online program in which people can either participate live in that 120-day challenge, or they can participate through video. So I'll have a video course that they can walk through as well, whether the live one's going or not. And then that particular one will help them find their soulmate. And then I can do Q&A questions that I do as well for them. And then the other aspect is my coaching business for business owners. So that one in 2020 is now going to start to grow. So that's my main focus in 2020, is to grow that. And I don't want to have more than 20 clients because the time freedom that I want, and more importantly, to be able to give the time to the clients the way I need to.
So if someone's listening and they're trying to find their soulmate, or they're trying to build out their business platform, what's the best way of them finding you?
Best way to find me is just go to my website. It's Jeff Krahl, KRAHL.com. And so that will get you to all my different platforms, whether you choose the business side or the high performance side or the relationship side of my coaching. So they can go to jeffkrahl.com, and there's lots of free items on there that they can go through.
So thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone listening. I mean, I think one of the bigger things to take away is just the idea that if you're looking for that relationship, if you're looking for building that business, is putting together a strong game plan. And one of the best ways to put that strong game plan together is going on Jeff's website. Right.
And I do have a free strategy session on there, so they can definitely strategize with me and go through that. Love to help them out.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. Please subscribe, please share, tell your friends, and we'd love to hear your feedback.
Thank you for listening to The Road to Growth, Success of an Entrepreneur. Please like, subscribe, and stay connected. Visit www.vinnySD.com.
Yeah, I created a website.
Hope to see you again next week. Team Vinny SD, signing off.